Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's On the Sofa. Very pleased to say that we've got Raffaele De Vita with us tonight, and I thank him because it was at very short notice that we managed to sort everything out. Right, I don't have a lot to say actually. I haven't got any announcements or anything to make. Crew on Saturday. Tomorrow the SAS travel is open early, 6 to 7, and I believe that's on the telephone, but Vic will give you a better update on that than I will. So let's get on with it. Good evening, Vic.
Good evening, Chris. Yeah, from 6 o'clock tomorrow because of England Wales, obviously at 7. Yeah, they'll be open on the phone. Barrow and Crawley. There are a few places left, not many. So if you want to go to Barrow on the 17th of December and Crawley on Saturday, those two trips are available from 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's get Rafa on, and there we go. Good evening, Rafa. How are you?
Hi guys, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Thank you again for joining us. It's a privilege to have you.
It's a pleasure.
And I'm going to leave you with Vic now. Any questions, please leave in the comments. We'll get through as many as we can. As I always say, we can't get through everything. And of course, any comments or anything, I will pass on to Rafa in a document at the end if we don't get through every more. Okay, so I will leave you and I'll speak to you later.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. It gives me great pleasure to say live from Rome, Raffaele De Vita. I don't think I've quite done. Have I done that okay? Do you want to do it properly?
Very good. Raffaele De Vita.
Lovely. That would be lovely. Thanks very much indeed. And you're currently with Anagni. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
And is that in Rome itself?
It's not actually in Rome. It's not too far. It's about, I would say, about 70 kilometers from Rome, so about an hour from Rome.
Oh, not too bad.
It still allows me to stay at home and travel every day. Yes.
So Italy not in the World Cup. You might have noticed that. This is a strange tournament in many respects, but for Italy, it must be a very strange tournament.
It is very strange in a way, yes, because we have a history of, competing at every World Cup. But if you think about, I was just talking about this. I was obviously born in 87, so I've seen Italy do well at World Cups. But if you think about it, the last 10, 12 years, we've done nothing at World Cups. So this is not that surprising. We've been on the downfall for the last sort of 10, 12 years. And there's been obviously the little incident, which I won't remember about, I will remind you about the European Championship. But that was, honestly, I can say that even as an Italian, that was an accident because anything could have happened. We won two big games on penalties. So it was just, we accidentally got to the final and then we won on penalties. So that was just a little light, that in a long period of defeats and disappointments for Italy.
Having said that, Mancini had an incredible record going into it, didn't he? It was like 30 odd games unbeaten, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's done amazing, to be honest. He's kind of changed the group of players that they kept getting picked over the years, and we couldn't really let go because they won us the World Cup in 2006. Well, he came in and kind of gave a chance to every promising young player, which obviously been pleasing for Italian fans, but we're still nowhere near the teams, the sort of the Germanys and even England and Spain and all them.
One other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we got on to matters that are pertinent to tonight. You might have noticed that the Scottish Football Association has banned heading the day before and the day after a game in training. You'll be aware, of course, there's a lot of controversy about heading of a football in training.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that? Because you obviously spent a great deal of time in Scotland. Are you surprised they've taken that step?
Yes, it is surprising because most of the teams play long balls and heading is as important as feet. But there's been a lot of research, and obviously, if they've taken this decision, there are a reason behind them. So I can understand the frustration of some people, but if it's something that had to be done, so we have to accept it, and it's probably done for the right reason, so that there can't be much to complain about.
Yeah, well, Well, we'll see whether that spreads into the English game and indeed worldwide as well. So we'll see that as time progresses. Now, let's go back to the beginning for you, because you supported Lazio as a boy, and there was a certain Lazio player that you sort of hooked up with a little later in your life, as it were.
Yeah.
But you started out at a boys' club in Rome. Is that how it all started for you?
It did, yeah. Yeah, started like everyone else around, my age in Rome, in the area where I'm from. So it was just football pretty much all day, every day, and then I got scouted really young. I think I just turned 15 when I got scouted by Blackburn. So my life kind of changed in a minute. Before that, it was just school and football, and all I knew was my family and my area and my local club. And then all of a sudden, I moved to England, new language, new professional environment. So it was a bit crazy looking back, but for me, it was just a chance to play football on grass, which I'd never really done before, because Rome doesn't have any grass pitches because it doesn't rain often enough. So it was just, yes, I left when I was 15, and my life kind of changed from there.
I was going to say, did you speak any English before you went across to I mean, Rome to Blackburn, with no disrespect to Blackburn.
Yeah.
Culturally, that's a massive change, isn't it? So how did you deal with that?
Couldn't really be any bigger. I'm from, I'm just on the outskirts of Rome, where basically you have buildings and concrete everywhere. And I went to Blackburn, where it was just sheep and grass everywhere. Something that I'd never really seen before. And I remember my dad being quite scared when he dropped me off there. He was adamant that I was going to stay. He kept saying to me, "You're coming back with me tomorrow. You're coming back with me," because he just couldn't believe what he was. He was leaving me in a place that was completely different. It felt like the other side of the world. It's not like now that you have the internet. It was 2002, 2003, so there was really no. When I went there, I kind of cut all my connections with Italy. Couldn't watch Italian TV. Couldn't speak to my mates all the time. I remember I used to make a phone call to call home. I had to get in a queue every night, and there was like a Nigerian player before me, or a French player, German player. They all had to call their own families, and every night there was a long queue just to get on the phone for 5 minutes to speak to your parents, to tell them how you're doing and how you're getting on. So it was a bit crazy. It was a big, for me, it was easier because I was just concentrating on football. But if I look back now, obviously I'm a parent myself, so I can understand what my mum and dad went through.
Didn't quite work out, Blackburn, did it? But then an even bigger change, really, because you go to Livingston. Had you heard of Livingston before you went there? I mean, did you know where it was, that kind of thing?
Not really. I didn't really know the Scottish League. I don't think in England I only realised this after, but in England they don't really talk about, or maybe they'll probably, I can say they probably undermine the Scottish game a little bit because obviously the standard is so high in England. But then later I realised that also in Scotland is there are a lot of really good players, and there's a good fan bases and lots of decent, really good teams. But I didn't really know much, and Blackburn, I didn't get to the first team because the first team the level was too high. It was a Blackburn Rovers side that was playing in Europa League every season, and as an 18-year-old, I was nowhere near ready. So obviously, I felt that it was time to go and get first team experience. And Livingston gave me that chance, which I was really, really happy about.
And you had a successful time there, didn't you?
Yes, it was a bit mental there as well, because the owners were Italian, and they made sure they did the things the Italian way. So we got relegated the first season for financial problems. There were problems with the players' wages, a lot of debt. So it wasn't as easy as I would have liked it to be. But eventually, I they left, and I stayed there and played a lot, scored goals, and that allowed me to move on after that. So
you do move on, and 76 appearances with 24 goals, I think it was. You were released at the end of the 2010-11 season. Then a football club comes calling. Now, in that summer of 2011, there was a massive change going on at Swindon, obviously. And the surprise appointment, believe me, it was a surprise appointment.
Yeah, imagine.
one of the most mercurial footballers ever to play in the Premier League, Paolo Di Canio, and indeed in Scotland, of course, with Celtic. So how did that come about? Your boyhood hero, Paolo Di Canio at Swindon, you're joining Swindon. How did that all happen?
It was a bit surreal, to be honest. I was at that point, I thought I was going to stay in Scotland. I had a few offers from championship teams. I thought I was 99% sure I was going to sign for Falkirk, which was a team in the Scottish Championship. But then out of nowhere, I remember my agent phoned me saying that he spoke to Jeremy Ray, which was the chairman at the time. And there was, he said he watched me play. I don't know why Jeremy had a lot of connections in Scotland, so he knew about Livingston, he knew about me, and there was an interest. But as soon as he mentioned Swindon, because obviously, Di Canio was my hero, so I obviously knew that he got into management. I kind of thought, I'm sure Di Canio is the manager there. So after a few minutes, I let my agent talk. Then I went, "Is Di Canio not the manager?" But I thought it can't be. This can't be happening. When he was like a dream. So he obviously said yes. He just got appointed, and first of all, he wasn't sure whether I had to go there for 2 weeks first to go in pre-season or sign straight away. But then eventually, after a couple of days, they decided to offer me a contract. So all of a sudden, I'm playing for Di Canio, and my agent tells me that he's going to ring me in 30 minutes. So it was honestly, it feels like a dream. It was. I just couldn't believe it, because for me, for Lazio fans, Di Canio is not like a normal player. He's like Totti for Roma. You know what I mean? He's like an idol. And for me, especially, it was even more because obviously he left Italy, went to England. So when I was a Blackburn, I used to watch him play for Charlton, and he just left West Ham. So I had a keen interest in him. When I was a ball boy, I made sure I was always on his side when I was at Ewood Park. So then he phones me. I'm driving and I nearly crash, and he's talking to me. I don't have a clue what he's saying because I'm starstruck. So 2 weeks after, I'm in Swindon, and he's talking as my manager. And honestly, I can say for 2 years I never really got used to it. It always felt like it was a bit surreal what was happening. But then everything else, obviously on top, there was 2 amazing seasons. So it wasn't just that; it was everything was magical for the whole time I was there.
Yeah, I'm reading Danny Wilson's book at the minute, who was his manager at Sheffield Wednesday, of course, when that famous incident happened. And he said the thing about Paolo Di Canio is he turned up quite late for pre-season training, and you thought, well, I'll have to give him special training.
Yeah.
But this man is a fitness fanatic. He's done his own training. Then, of course, he comes to Swindon. How was that? Because there's this famous pre-season training, of course, in Italy, which you all went off to. How was it when you got there and it all started?
It was torture. He was the by far the hardest preseason I've ever had in my life. The 2 hardest preseasons, and I mean, I've had a few preseasons in Scotland, and Scotland is very old school. So you don't see the ball, you run a lot, and Di Canio was 10 times as hard as that. It was basically everything that you think about Di Canio. I think Simon Ferry talks about this, and I was the same. When I thought of Paolo Di Canio, I just thought about flair, 5-a-sides, just crossing and finishing, enjoy yourself. It was the exact opposite. He was a perfectionist from the first day. You just knew there was something special about him. He was so clear in his message. And when you have managers that are so they're so clear in what they want to do, you just believe that their way is the best way. So he was very good at making us believe that the way things were done were were right for us, would have allowed us to win a lot of games, and that's what happened. But when we went to Norcia was the place we went to the first pre-season, which is 2 hours from Rome. In a way, it was amazing for me because my family could come and visit, but I was so knackered that I didn't want to speak to them in the afternoon. I just asked them, I'm just going to bed. I just want to sleep as much as I can. It was 3 sessions a day, just running in the morning. We didn't even see a football. And then in the afternoon, it would just be tactics. There was never any 5-a-sides or anything enjoyable. It was always either tactics or running. And after a few months, we realized how important that was, because you can remember it. We used to play, we were so well drilled, and we just knew exactly what to do on the pitch. We knew each other so well because we worked on things so much every single day. We didn't get a day off. I know this has been said before.
Yeah, famously, it was months, wasn't it, before you had a day off?
It was nearly 2 months, yes, probably over 2 months. It was, it's obviously it was easier because then we started winning, but I was completely hooked, and he could have told me to do anything, I would have done it. And because obviously for me it was a little bit easier because he was someone who I always wanted to please, but for other people it was a bit difficult because he's man management. Obviously, it's a lot to be desired sometimes. He's got a way. You either follow him or you're out, basically.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, this was also a period of great transformation with players coming in, the like of Alberto Comazzi, the goalkeeper Lanzani. All these people were coming in, weren't they? And how difficult was that? Because you've got to bond the team together, haven't you? Yeah. So all these players are coming in, and famously over the next 2 years, they continue to come in as well, as we know. Yeah. But how difficult was that?
At the start, it was very difficult. Because basically Paulo was, Di Canio was one of the type of manager that after 3 games he wanted to change everyone. And when he found out that in England you can have these emergency loans, at different stages of the season, he basically, every time we played a bad game, he was, up in the boardroom to ask for 3 new players. I need a new striker, I need a new midfielder, I need a new defender. So I think we counted. There must have been about 45 different players that put on the jersey that year. And it was difficult to start. But then I remember maybe from September, October, we kind of started having a settled side where, you knew who the main players were. Maybe you would rotate a few, but, Foderingham and, Ferry, Cadiz and Ritchie would always play. And then you had Flint and McCormack, which formed a good partnership. You had Callum Kennedy on the left, and always the same players, which obviously helped because people started to get to know each other, and we knew exactly what to do because we knew each other so well. So that helped. But at the start, it was really difficult, as you remember. The results weren't great, and there was a lot of uncertainty around that time.
Well, you might just notice behind me my power. I've got to explain there is a problem with the power in my house, but you might just be able to see the shirt behind me, and there's also a photograph behind me, behind that little garden gnome thing.
Yes, yeah.
That's of your championship winning side the day you got the trophy presented. So I thought it was nice to get those up for you. Obviously, it was a bad start. You had a great win in the first game, obviously. A 3-0 against Crewe. Callum Kennedy got the first goal, if I remember rightly, from the penalty spot. And flags were waving, music was playing. It was a fantastic day.
He was raging. He was raging about that game, though.
Was he?
Just to show you. So we played Crewe, and then I think we had may have given us a day off for the first time, and then on the Monday, he destroyed us. We were on the training ground for about 3 hours because we didn't play well that game.
No.
We won 3-0, and he was absolutely raging. That just shows that he's not a manager that, there's a lot of old school managers, especially in the UK. You win, you get 2 days off, everyone's happy, just keep the place happy. But he just saw something that he didn't like. And he said, we won't win games if we play like that. And he was right, because then, we didn't win a game for another 4 weeks.
No, in that run, of course, there was the defeat against our nearest and not so dearest down the road, which is a big disappointment, I think, not only to the fans, but I think to the squad as well, because Lucas Maguero came on and he made his debut and that hit the post. But it was a disappointing day, wasn't it, for everybody?
I was suicidal that game. I remember I didn't want to, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, wanted to go and get a bite to eat that night. I remember I just wanted to sit in a dark room and just, I didn't want to see anyone. It was, there was a lot of expectation for me, especially because I'd never really been involved in that atmosphere. You could just feel the tension and how much the fans wanted but for me, it wasn't just a game. It was a disaster. For me, it was like the end of the world, because I felt like we let the fans down on that day, and it was the first time I really experienced fans being angry and disappointed. So for me, it was horrible memories, to be honest.
Yeah, pretty horrible for us. But a few days later, you went to Ashton Gate, and another local
night,
goal.
yes.
Yeah, and I think it was a certain Raffaele De Vita who might have got the winning goal. Is that right?
Yeah, that was something I needed, because I didn't start well that season, and there was obviously a few doubts on not just me, obviously a few players that no one knew about, and Di Canio signed out of nowhere. So to score in a game that again meant a lot for the fans, because they're close rivals, and obviously playing a higher level than us, it was massive. But then obviously we still had a couple of shaky games, but that gave us a lot of confidence. I thought that night we were fantastic. I don't know if you remember the game. We just showed that gave us even when we lost the next couple of games, that gave us the belief that we were a good team. I thought we battered them all game, and we deserved to win. And they were, we're talking about a championship side, so not something that you don't see a lot. League Two teams going away and bossing games like that.
Well, we'll talk about the game against the Premier League team a little later in the FA Cup. But you've mentioned a couple of players already, and the partnership between McCormack and Flint, which kind of came about a little bit by accident in a way, but then the signing of Wes Fodringham, how important was that? So I remember he made his debut up at Accrington, and to my mind, he's one of the top 5 keepers that Swindon have ever had. A fabulous goalkeeper. How important was that signing?
He was outstanding, and what a signing that it wasn't someone that he brought in at the start of the season with a lot of expectation. He was someone that was signed from non-league, and no one really expected anything from. And for me, it was difficult because Mattia Lanzano was was one of my mates, and I shared a house with him, and I was really close with him. So seeing what he went through with the mistake at Burton, and then he was mistreated a bit, and because they wanted him out, and it wasn't nice. But if I look at from the perspective of a Swindon fan, or also a Swindon player, having Wes completely changed the team, because he was you could just tell from the first game he was phenomenal, and then he just grew in confidence and everything else. And he was I agree with you. I mean, you probably obviously seen Swindon for a lot longer than me, but for what I've seen the last sort of 10 15 years, he's struggled to find anyone better than him.
Well, he's had a fantastic career, of course, up in Scotland with Rangers, Sheffield United. Fabulous. So that bad run then, how was that in the dressing room? Because I mean, I interviewed Paolo Di Canio a few times, and the problem is, once you ask him a question, you're there for 20 minutes whilst he and you'll be aware of that in the dressing room. So how was the mood, would you say?
It was, I can't even explain it. I think it was a month of, I would have rather been in prison, to be honest. It was that bad. It was every single day. It was like an hour meeting before training. Videos of how bad we were. He also once, what he did, we were having lunch, and he came in the canteen with a lot of papers. He had papers in his hand, and he started handing out papers. And what he'd done, basically, he printed off the CV of every single player, and basically wanted to make a point that no one got promotion in that CV. A lot of people had relegations, like Simon, obviously the year before. I think the Italian players had a few, and I was the only one with 2 promotions in Scotland. But obviously he gave it to me, and he said, "You've done nothing. That's a Mickey Mouse league, so don't even be proud of that." So it was so basically he kind of destroyed everyone every single day, and he wasn't. That's what he couldn't do. He couldn't be. He didn't know when people needed an arm around the shoulder. He was always tough even when we're doing well. So he only knew one way of treating players, because probably that's the way he got, managers got the best out of him, maybe. but it was very tough. And you know, for people that never been used to it, it was difficult. It was difficult for me. There was times where I was, you know, kind of just didn't know where to bang my head after training. I was like, what else can I do? And he's just never happy. Yeah, but he you know, if I look back, he made everyone stronger, and if you speak to anyone else, they'll tell you it made them better players.
Yeah, well, I've spoken to Matt Ritchie about this, and he said he kind of made his career in a way. He just, because look what Matt Ritchie's done, for goodness sake. Simon Ferry loved it. Cadiz, Paul Cadiz, you know, all these players.
Yeah.
It all benefited their career at the time. I'm guessing you would think it was some sort of hell, but you know,
that's the thing. Yeah, that's exactly the thing. If you at the time you think I'm going through a nightmare, but when I look back, because obviously I had a lot of different experiences, and I realized, you know, if I could go back, I would honestly try to enjoy even the difficult times. Try to kind of suck up every single minute, because I learned a lot, even in difficult situations. But the biggest thing I learned is how to be a professional. It kind of changed me anyway, from someone who was just, you know, kicking a ball into a footballer, which, like, I realized my life had to revolve around football 24/7, because I could see the way he was living his life as a manager. And I realized that, you know, if you wanted to be a footballer, your life had to be, you know, all about football and nothing else.
Now, if I was to point to two fixtures in that season, Plymouth away,
yeah,
because things started to click, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched that Plymouth goal over and over again, and it is a fabulous move that led to your goal. And Huddersfield Town in the FA Cup, a 4-1 win at the County Ground. Now, to me, those are kind of like the two standouts of that first half of the season, if you like.
Yeah.
What do you remember of that Plymouth goal? Because it came against a bit of a backdrop, didn't it? Do you want to explain about that?
Yeah, it was the week when Di Canio's dad passed away. I think it might have been at the start and middle of that week. So let's say a Tuesday or Wednesday. He was very close to his dad, and he was, you know what he's like. He's a very passionate person, so he shows his emotions, and you could see him during the week. He was when it happened, obviously, it was emotional. But this is another thing about him. He was so close to his dad. He was his life. His parents were his life. He only left England for one day, and then he came back. That's how much, even you know, that one of the worst moments in your life where anyone else would think, you know, I don't care about football. This is my family, and my mum needs me there. My family needs me there. I'll take time off. He would just wanted to be, you know, in the dugout on the Saturday. So I think he went back, had the funeral, and then the next day traveled back to England, like not like nothing happened, but he just wanted to be there. Didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him. And I obviously knew about the relationship with his father, because you know, I grew up reading his book, reading his story, so I knew what he meant for him. It was a horrible time. So it was destiny that you know, for me to score that goal and win 1-0. I think it was maybe 10 minutes left. We win that game, and then I went over to him to say, this is for your dad, and he was an amazing moment, and he thanked me. This is probably the only time he really thanked me for something. But he was crying. I remember there's a picture where I think it was Mehdi Carouge. He was dragging him towards the fans, and he didn't want to go, and he was crying his eye. He was like a baby. I've never really seen an adult, crying like that. It was a beautiful moment. Yes.
Yeah, to me, that kind of epitomised Swindon's football that season when it got going. I mean, it's a move 4, 5, 6 passes. Yeah. And I think Di Canio described it as a goal as good as anything you'd see in the Champions League, which might be a bit over the top for the 4th division, but you can see what he meant by that. I mean, it was just a poetry in motion goal, wasn't it?
Yeah. But if you see the players that were involved, you know, you have Matt Ritchie, a Premiership player. Simon Ferry, he still says he's a bad player, but he was one of the best players I played with. You know, Mehdi Carouge was an amazing player. I think Jake Jervis, good strike. You know, there was quality involved. So obviously it's hard to see in League Two where games are a bit scrappy, but we had moments like that with this sort of players. You know, you couldn't really. I saw that in training every day. I wasn't really surprised, but it was obviously a beautiful, a perfect goal.
Yeah, tidy finish from Raffaele De Vita, if I might say so too.
Yeah.
When was it you suddenly thought, do you know what? I mean, I know you said right at the beginning where you thought you had the players around you to do well, but when was the moment you suddenly thought, hang on, this could be a special season? When did you think that?
Maybe I would say Christmas. I think Christmas was crucial. And it's something that Di Canio always told us when we were running in pre-season and we couldn't even breathe after a few days, and he kept saying the other teams are not doing this. Other teams are playing five-a-sides, having nice pre-season, and then they'll play the first few games. They'll fly and they'll win games for the first 5 or 6 games, and then they'll just collapse at Christmas, and we will kick on. And he kept saying this, and then it happened. We were just smashing teams, and the season after it was the same. I don't know if you remember with the Tranmere, with teams 4-5-0 every week. So around Christmas, I thought no one can stop us here, and then I saw the players that he signed, and kind of even when our performances dropped as well. For me, for example, around February, I wasn't playing well, and he brought Luke Rooney, players that were doing well in that league. We just thought we have too much, for other teams. I just felt that, after February, March, there was no doubts we were going to be up there at the end of the season.
I mentioned that Huddersfield game, which I remember with great fondness. I just thought it was a fabulous performance, 4-1 against Huddersfield. And of course, it led eventually to a certain tie against Wigan, which we'll get to in a minute. But you mentioned Christmas period, and I cannot not mention the fact that there's a number 23 running alongside an Italian ex-footballer down towards the away end in the final moments of that game after Alan McCormack had scored a winner deep into injury time. And what on earth was going on? What did you think?
It was such a crazy game. I think we went down to 10 men because Oliver Ressa got sent off, and we weren't playing well. I think we were losing 1-0, and then Alan Connell scored a great goal, like he always. He popped up with so many good goals that season. And then at the end of the game, we're thinking, one each is fine. But then you see Alan McCormack running with 70 yards with the ball, and you see Di Canio running with him and trying to push him. And then we play a 1-2, and when I had the ball in my feet, I kind of looked up and I thought, someone's got to be at the back post, because that's where Matt Ritchie used to be all the time. But I look up and I see a ball dead, appearing.
What's he doing there?
I don't know how he managed to. He was a phenomenal player. To be at the end of the game, to be up there sprinting. I don't know how many yards he sprinted to get to the end, and the end of that, and then we score. And I'm running towards the players, but then I see Di Canio kind of coming my way, and I started grabbing. I regret it now because I still get the Mickey take out, from when I speak to Simon and players like that, because it's not very usual that you grab. You find yourself running alongside a manager on the pitch during a game. But it was that was another moment when we thought, things are going our way, and it's got to be the year we get promoted.
Well, it was an iconic moment and will be forever remembered in Swindon Town folklore. There's no question about that. So to Wigan then, I mean, Wigan are a side, the Premier League at the time. You're in League 2, 4th Division, in the FA Cup. Wigan get a penalty, go in front, packed county ground. Alan Connell again comes up with a very important goal.
Yeah.
And somebody we haven't mentioned yet, but who turns out to be a crucial signing, I think, is Paul Benson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take us through how that was, those final minutes there, because Matt Ritchie, it's an absolute screamer, doesn't he? Benson just gets a deflection. Take us through those final minutes and how it felt.
I just couldn't believe it. It was another surreal moment. Even before the game, for me, it was a special. I remember it's probably I would say the biggest game I've been involved in terms what it meant for me, because I came from the Scottish League, where sometimes I was playing in front of 500 people, and no disrespect, it didn't mean, obviously it meant a lot for fans and Livingston fans, but we're talking about a game, Swindon against Wigan. It was the first time that one of my games was shown on Sky in Italy, so my family could watch me on TV. So you can imagine how, I felt like, I'm involved in real football now. When I'm playing for Livingston against Peterhead or Elgin is not the same. You know, if my family asked me where you're playing today, they don't have a clue where I am. You know, to watch me, to actually sitting on their sofa in Rome, you know, the switch on the telly and the see me on TV for me was the first time where I felt, you know, I'm involved in professional football here. So for me, it was surreal. And but I remember again, we prepared the game so well that I was calm during the game, and I felt that I knew. And this is another thing. They had so many changes, and Fabrizio, and especially Fabrizio, because he was the one who was doing all the research in the background. He was the one that had to try and guess what team they would put on the field, and he managed to get everyone right. So we knew exactly who was playing. And I felt like I knew the right back inside out, and even though I was playing against a Premiership player, I felt like you know, I didn't feel inferior, which I was obviously because I was playing League Two. And I just felt, even a 1-0, I never felt that, you know, we're gonna get battered here. I never felt like that. I always felt, you know, we can go and get a goal and maybe win the game. And it was amazing when we went, because I think Paul Benson came on at half time, if I'm not. Was it Ronan Murray played first half, and you know, when Benno came on, it must have been his first or second game, I'm not sure. And he was such an important player because he gave us that physicality that obviously Alan and Ronan didn't have. And then, you know, at the end of the game, it was just it was surreal. It was a dream, and it's still, when I think about it, it feels like a dream. You know, when you can't really remember what you're seeing, but to play in a stadium that, you know, I felt like I was playing at the Bernabeu in Madrid. It was 15,000. It felt like it was 80,000 for me. I never really experienced anything like that before, so it was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, I wish I could have enjoyed it even more, but obviously you're young and you don't really realize what you're going through.
Well, I live in Devon. I floated back. That's all I'm going to say to you. But I'm guessing that Paul Benson was Di Canio's kind of player. Am I right in saying that? Because I remember at Morecambe on Good Friday, Swindon were winning 1-0, last minute of the game. Benson chases down something and prevents an attack happening. I mean, it was such a willing spirit, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He's just the perfect guy to have in the change room for me. He's and a player, because obviously he wasn't very technical. He was, you know, if you see him in the street, you know, you think he's anything but a footballer, to be honest. If you see him on the pitch, the way he works and what he does for the team, and he's the most humble guy I've ever seen in my life. You know, usually when people come from, I felt that sometimes when we had signings or loanees from a higher level, they always came not with a chip on their shoulder, but with, you know, I'm better than this. I'm just here to get games. But he was so humble. You would ask him to do anything, he would do it. He was so nice around the place. Great guy to have for the young players as well. Just a positive, you know, person to have around. And obviously, Di Canio wanted people like that, people that just wanted to do well and listen to the manager and gave everything for the team. So he was the perfect signing. I think he was very important for us.
There was a game, I think, if I might point to, Macclesfield at home. And it was a scrappy one, and it was a 1-0 win.
Yeah.
And I thought after that game, do you know what? Yeah, they're going to win something here. They're going to go up. I mean, that was the sort of game. I mean, we've spoken to team, you know, players from the last championship team that we've had, and there was a scrappy 1-0 win against Stevenage.
Yeah.
And it's games like that. It's not the 4 and 5 nils that win the titles, is it? It's the doggy 1-0 victories.
I agree with that. Absolutely. There was a few games like that during that season. So yeah, we're massive, especially when you're not playing well, to get 3 points in such games. You know, it's massive, and that's exactly gives you even more confidence to see. You know, if we can win without playing well, imagine when we click and we start games well, we can hammer anyone. Absolutely.
Obviously, there was a defeat by Leicester in the FA Cup. In the next round, which is disappointing, but hey, you know, there are bigger fish to fry. You're coming towards the end of the season, and there's also the Johnston's Paints Trophy run.
Yeah.
A great success over Barnet in the semis, but then there was the bizarre final with the bizarre team selections.
Yeah.
If you remember, what were your thoughts ahead of that game?
It's the biggest disappointment of my life. To took away the chance, took away, my chance to play at Wembley, which, and now as the time, the more time goes on, I get even more, disappointed upset about that, because at that time I was 22, 23. So you always think, oh, it's going to happen again. And also when, if obviously you mentioned it, that week we signed 3 players who never really trained with us: Jay McEverly, John Bostock, and Holmes, I think he was. I can't remember his first name. Lee Holmes, maybe.
Lee, yeah. I know you mean.
Yeah, from Southampton. That obviously the one who took my place. Three really good players, but I kind of playing in every round, so I was desperate to play in that game. But he spoke to me. That's another thing. That's how much Di Canio had an influence on me. He waited for training to finish, and before I left to go to the change room, he kind of asked me to go for a walk with him, which never really did. He never really took time to speak to players individually. He wasn't as I said, he wasn't a man manager. And he kind of gave me the bad news, but at the same time, he said, I will never forget what we're going through and what you're doing for me, for my team. He kind of told me all the nicest thing I could ever hear. He said, I will never forget. You always have Di Canio on your side. Wherever you go, I'll help you. Just everything you want to hear from a hero. So I kind of went home, and I was like, my family were all traveled from Italy, and they looked at me. I looked quite not happy, but I was, quite calm. And then I went, oh, by the way, I'm not playing tomorrow. And they were obviously devastated. But even my mum was like, why are you so calm? Are you not? Surely you should be in tears now. And I couldn't, because that's how much Di Canio could influence the way I thought. I was kind of proud that he would say something like that about me, and I never really thought that this is my chance to play at Wembley. But then the game starts and I don't come on, and we lose the game. It was disappointing for at least I wanted the team to win. But even if that was the case, you know what it's like. If you don't come on, you don't feel part of it. So it would have been a disappointing game, but it would have been nice for everyone to. It was horrible to see 40,000 people, fans from Swindon, the Swindon end, to be so disappointed. So it was one of the saddest days probably of my 2 years of Swindon.
Yeah, disappointing day for all of us. Paul Caddis, of course, didn't play because of injury in that game. But there's little touches like Pete, the bus driver. I always remember I used to chat with Pete quite a lot, but he sat on the bench that day at Wembley, didn't he? So there were little things like that where Di Canio kind of valued the people that did things in the club. So that goes a long way.
Yeah, I think he was very good at with his staff. To maybe he would be very hard on them, but then he would show glimpse of I don't know, a different man sometimes. Even with was it Curly's name?
Yes.
There was one. He was there all the time, and he was a lovely man, and he would help with the tea and the coffees, and Di Canio was obsessed with him, so he always wanted him around, and he didn't want anyone else around. He didn't want the office guys to be involved, to eat with the team or be in the same room, but he wanted Curly everywhere. So he had that. He was. I think it was more superstition than anything, but he had moments where he wanted random people around him, and Pete the bus driver was another one.
There was another sad moment for him, of course, that season, ironically against Plymouth again, when he'd lost his father earlier in the season, and now his mother. What did you know about that at the time? You've said that he, took very little time away for his father. How was it with his mother that time?
Well, that was even worse, but we were the reason why it was worse. We kind of misbehaved after the Plymouth game, and there was the famous, which we look back laughing now, but it was a bit silly to do. I think we beat Plymouth on the Saturday, and he told us he was going home to Italy until the Tuesday when we would have played Aldershot to win the league, to get promoted. Sorry.
Yeah.
But for us, it was like an army camp being with Di Canio, to be honest. It was like we were like soldiers in the military. So when he told us that he was going, for us, it was like when the teacher says to the kids, you're alone for the next hour. I've got something to do. So you know what it's like. The teacher's left. We can all go crazy and do what we want. So he was like that, and we shouldn't have done it. We just thought, well, because another thing, Alan McCormack had his baby that day, so he kind of asked us to go out for a drink, and then he turned into more than one, and then he turned into 3-4 hours out, and we went home quite late. And then next day we realized we're in deep trouble because the assistant manager Fabrizio and Claudio, the fitness coach, knew from our faces what probably from the smell of some lads that what had happened. And when he came on Tuesday, he wasn't happy. And but when in moments like that, you just hope, let the game go well, and please make sure we win this game and everything is forgotten. And then we go and play a terrible match, and we get beat 2-0. And after the game in the changing room, it was a matter of trying to not get killed and stay alive. To be honest, it was just things being thrown everywhere. His Rolex got smashed into the wall, and the skip, we had a big skip with the boots in. I don't know how he managed to lift that, because about 150 kilos. He was throwing that from one side of the room to the other. So it was mayhem. It was horrible, and he made sure that we paid for it, and deservedly so. When I look back, if I see a young player doing this now, I'd say, I think all the worst things of him, because you can't do something like that, and especially for the people that travelled on the Tuesday. It was just horrible, and it's something that I've never done. I've never really been someone that went out every weekend. I wasn't into drinking, so I just don't know what I'd done at the wrong time. I just got carried away, and I was disappointed to be involved in that.
Well said. So yeah. Now, obviously, let's go to the lighter side of it. Now, I mean, I remember the bizarre day at Gillingham when we lost 3-1.
Yeah.
Wes Fodringham was locked outside trying to get into the game because he'd been suspended, hadn't he, by Di Canio. But promotion was achieved that day. And then there's that glorious day against Port Vale on the final day of the season when you win the title, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Not only do you win, you romp it. And if you're ever going to win a title, that is the way to win a title, isn't it?
Yeah. It was a perfect Saturday, and it was just amazing to get promoted after such a long and difficult season. If you think the way it started and all the things we went through, difficult moments, people leaving, fights. Obviously, Leon Clark, who is something that we'd not mentioned, but that was an interesting night as well. And to win it in that way was just amazing, and I was so happy. And even though I played less in the final stages of the season, I was buzzing. I just couldn't wait to, my first season in proper season in England, to get promoted and to get the chance to play at a higher level with better players. It was just everything I dreamed of.
We've got some lovely comments coming in. This is from Joe. Still love my 2012 away shirt, which I was trying to get. That's not the blue and yellow one, is it? The away one?
We had the blue and yellow. We had the black one as well. We played.
The black one, yeah. The blue and yellow one was the following season, I think.
Yeah, that's the league one. Yes, it was a beautiful one. It's like Boca Junior.
Boca Junior one, yeah. Although blue and yellow for an away shirt for a
Yeah.
In all, it's De Vita 23 glory, STFC cult hero. Darren says, bravo, Rafa. That speaks volumes about your characters, going back to what you said. Tremendous spirit. Great memories listening to Rafa again. Speaks so well. That goal at Ashton Gate in the League Cup win was a moment too great to put one over City. That, for me, set the tone for the games that followed. Great season. Gordon says, I've got a photo of that, you running down the touchline with Di Canio. What is your best memory of the 2011-12 season? Anthony again says, mine was Northampton away when psychologically we won the league. And he also says, great player in the 2012 title winning team. So if you look back at that season, that 5-0 romp was a great day for everybody. If you're going to win a league, you're going to win a league like that. But what was your favourite memory, would you say? So many, I guess, of that season.
Yes, I would have to be Wigan. I can't, personally, for the way, where I came from, and, might not be the same for, say, Simon Ferry. He played at Wembley the year before. He played in big games, even with Celtic. For me, Wigan meant so much. It just, honestly, the time I felt that I felt like a footballer. You know what I mean? And it was something that 6 months before I would never have dreamed of. It was like playing in a, so Swindon Stadium is an amazing stadium. I remember the fact that when I played against Crewe, it must have been maybe 7,000-8,000. For me, it felt like 50,000. It was such a beautiful stadium, and it's crazy because when it happens, you just feel like it's normal, but then you look back and you think, wow, I wish I could go back for one game and experience that again, or score at the county ground. It was special, and I always say to the young players now, because I'm obviously one of the oldest ones, enjoy every minute, because you think what you experience is what you're going to experience for the rest of your life, but a career is a lot of bad moments and dull seasons, and when you actually are at a place where you're happy, you have to enjoy it. I know it's difficult because there's always the next game. You don't know if you're going to get picked. You don't know about your next contract. You worry about things, but you have to enjoy, because you don't get to live so many special moments. And for me, the 2 seasons of Swindon are by far the 2 best seasons I've had. And I've had success, I've had promotions elsewhere, but the 2 seasons for me, for many reasons, were the best, the best time of my life.
Well, let's talk about the second season then, because we haven't got on to that yet, which is a season of great turmoil, of course, because Di Canio leaves sort of part way through after a 0-0 draw at Leyton Orient, if memory serves. But we touched on these before, but there was that incredible run of fixtures when you beat Tranmere 5-0.
Yeah.
Then you beat Pompey 5-0, unbelievably. But then, disappointingly, a 4-0 win against Carlisle. You know, I know when you say disappointingly, it sounds ridiculous, but to have got 3-5-0 home wins in a row, that would have been amazing. But that spell, the mood must have been flying out the window, must it? How was it?
We honestly, even more than the first season, at that point, I felt that we were the best team in the league. We were physically, the way we played, it was just no one could get near us, especially at Christmas. If Tranmere were second in the league, I think, and we smashed them. Then went to Oldham, which was a tricky game, and we beat them 2-0, and we couldn't put a foot wrong. I just felt like invincible that time. And I'm a very negative player in my head. I always think like something bad is going to happen, something negative is going to happen, a bad result around the corner. But around that time, I just felt there was too much positivity around the place, and it was the best. I think it was the best stage of the season. Obviously, after that, everything happened with Di Canio leaving, so it wasn't. For me, it wasn't a good time. It didn't end well, but Christmas was phenomenal. It was exactly what he told us it would happen.
And also there have been transfer embargoes, all that kind of thing, which you were sort of. I mean, how did that affect you as players? Did that affect you? Because I'm guessing there's a revolving door anyway. I mean, we always used to joke that he got more than one team sitting in the stand. You mentioned Mehdi Karouche earlier. I remember him distancing down the tunnel at half-time against Colchester in the Cup. We never saw him again. It was that sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, anyone that stepped out of line with him was out, and Mehdi was he was a character, so he didn't like people telling him what to do. He was a very, he just wanted to be himself, and he didn't want anyone to tell him how to live his life and how to train. It just never worked with Di Canio. He wasn't the only one. There was a few that didn't get used to his ways, and they just went out. But Di Canio, that's his way to manage, and he wouldn't have got the success he got if he managed in a different way. If he'd have been too easy with the players, he wouldn't have had the same level of concentration, and people were scared sometimes. So we obviously focused more, and we took care of the little details, because we didn't want to let him down. We didn't want him to, we lost against Macclesfield in the FA Cup that season. And then the next day we were in at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch a game. It was still dark outside, and you locked in a room at Lidington watching the full game. So that's a sort of punishment we used to get when we didn't play well. So we didn't want that to happen. So it's an extra motivation. I don't think it works all the time, but obviously no one wanted to let him down, because we knew that we would have paid for it. So anyone that had a problem with him was obviously out. But as you said, there was so many players even that season, and the quality. If you think about the signings that season, it was even higher level than the League Two season. To sign players like Tommy Miller and Gary Roberts, even though it didn't really work out for him. But the quality of these players were at least championship level, and he showed that. James Collins and there was a lot more. Jay McKevell even signing permanent. There was a lot of good players.
We mentioned Jay McKevell. He famously got that hat trick, of course, and that League Cup win at Stoke, which featured a team who included in their side Peter Crouch, for goodness' sake.
I think James Collins was, yes. Collins.
Yeah. So, that was a great result too, wasn't it? The League Cup away at Stoke. Incredible.
Amazing. That was another amazing night. And to play, that's a ground where a lot of Premiership teams failed to score that season. And they didn't really have a reserve team out. If you scored 4 at Stoke, but the kids were playing, then you wouldn't have meant the same. But a lot of experienced players. But I think we had Jermaine Pennant on our side, and Robert Huth and another England international. I can't remember his name. The centre back, and then Sorensen in goal. Peter Crouch, Jonathan Walters. It was a proper Premiership side, and we went there and we honestly played amazing, and James scored. Carlos scored a hat trick, and but then if you remember, then 3 days later we went to Preston, and another memorable afternoon.
The West Fodringham incident.
Yeah.
What did you think of that? I mean, West came and sat up with the crowd. It was bizarre, wasn't it? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I've been watching Swindon since '68. I mean, for goodness sake, he was kicking water bottles, everything. It was an extraordinary moment, wasn't it?
It was, yes. These are episodes that when you look back after 10 years, you just laugh. But at the time, you think, what the hell is going on? But he told us after Stoke, we were all obviously excited, all so happy about the win, and we're all buzzing. And I remember he came the next day and he said, I hate these moments. And we were like, what's happened now? It's like, I hate it when I get messages from friends back home and family telling me we're doing great, that we're an amazing team, because when this happens, there's something bad around the corner. That's the way he used to think. He hated people getting carried away. And he said, we have Preston away, and if you get carried away, we'll get battered there. And that's exactly what happened. So he had that in his head. After 10 minutes, there's a mistake and we give the goal away. And then the second one, and Wes is arguing with McCormack. And then I look up and I see this big wrist going like this, and the touchline telling Wes to come off. And at the same time, you have a 16-year-old putting his gloves on, which, Lee Bedwell had hardly trained with us. And all of a sudden he's playing in a League One game at the top of the table clash. So it was bizarre. And then the interview after the game, which is, I still watch sometimes, I still look for on YouTube when he calls him League One Wes, and it's funny now, but at the time you're thinking, what is happening? But he was he is funny. If you look back at what happened and the way he handled that situation, because I don't know if you didn't have Simon on the show.
No, you'll know that we've tried. We would have Simon on, but you're well aware that we have to be very careful with Simon. I've seen him. I've talked to Simon about this a lot, about Di Canio's time. Yeah. Go on. So
he's made a living out of it, but talking about Di Canio. He's got a famous podcast. He's an amazing podcast, which I still watch every single episode, because he talks about stories from the changing rooms with not just him, even the players that he invites on the podcast. But he talks about this. So Di Canio, after the game, he basically says, Wes is out. He's never going to play for me again. And then he kind of goes back to, he changes it, and he goes, well, if he wants to play for us, he has to apologise. And so then we all tell Wes, we phone him and text him and say, oh, you need to apologise. And Wes is like, I'm not apologising for anything. I've not done anything wrong. He took me off because I made a mistake, and I was obviously fuming, but I didn't do anything bad. So then basically says, well, if you don't apologise, you're not going to play for the club again. So eventually he agrees, obviously, basically forced him to apologise. So then the next day we have a meeting, and Di Canio he just looked so happy, had a big grin in his face, because he managed to to force him to apologize. So he's like, go on, what do you want to say? And then Wes stands up and obviously it's a token gesture. And he's like, well, I'd like to apologize for what I've done. And then at that point, Di Canio shoves him out of the way and he goes, well, you see, your friend Wes shit himself and he apologized. And then he basically forced him to apologize, and then he bragged about the fact that he apologized. And Wes is behind him going, well, you basically forced me to say it, and then you telling me that I kind of I was scared of not apologizing. So it's the way he was funny, even in difficult situation. He made us laugh, but you weren't allowed to laugh, but inside you would be, I found him hilarious, even in difficult situations.
Incredible. Then he leaves, as I said, it was a 0-0 draw at Leyton Orient on the Tuesday night, if I remember. Matt Ritchie famously goes to Bournemouth for chicken feed now, £500,000.
Incredible, right?
Yeah, incredible. And then Di Canio decides to leave. Kevin McDonald takes over. The season ends in the playoffs. There's that bonkers game at Brentford. It kind of all unraveled a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
I apologise to Fabrizio, by the way, because he was in charge for one game. Once they won at Tranmere, went to the top of the league, 100% record Fabrizio. Apologies. Yeah.
He never fails to mention that when I see him. 100% record. Left as a top of the league manager.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the 2 months with Kevin McDonald personally, I couldn't wait for the season to end. I was hoping that we would have had enough to get promoted, but just everything changed from the training to the way the things were done. I just got used to such a professional behavior from the staff. Everything was top class. They used to run the club as a Premiership club. It was phenomenal. So I got used to that level of professionalism, and all of a sudden, Kevin McDonald, nice guy, lovely guy, but he was always used to dealing with kids at Aston Villa. I think that was his background. So he came in, he was just tried to get enjoyment in the place, but that's it. Just go, play, express yourselves, and I didn't like that. I was used to having a structure. I enjoyed when the manager told me what he wanted from me, because I didn't have any excuses. I knew what he wanted. If I obviously failed to do it, I would have been out the next game. For me, that was straightforward, and I knew where I stood. With Kevin McDonald, it was all more just go out and do what you can. He always used to say, drive the ball. Whenever you have the ball, drive the ball. It was all about driving the ball. There was no tactics. And we felt that, and we didn't win many games. We managed to scrape into the playoffs, but we were probably the team with the worst form at the time. But again, it could have been a different story if we scored a penalty. So at the end of the day, it could have been happy ending, but it wasn't to be. But it was, for me, it wasn't a nice way to finish, because I enjoyed every single minute of it, and my head kind of went in the last 2 months. I wasn't enjoying it so much. I just felt that something was gone, and I would have never have had it back. So I was a bit disappointed. And to get promoted to the Championship is another one of my biggest disappointments, of my life, because it would have been, you never know what happens when you go to the Championship. You become a Championship player, which I can't, right now I can't say I've ever played in the Championship. I could have said, not many people get to play in the second tier of English football. It would have been amazing. So it is disappointing, but it is what it is.
Yeah, very disappointing night at Griffin Park. Those penalties. Anyway, let's move on from that. Anthony says, I'll never forget Carlisle 4-0. I had £10 on 5-0 at 12-1. See, that's how it affects people. Then, of course, you get released. Did you get offered a contract? How was it? Or did you just get released? What happened?
It was a bit strange, because they didn't really know what to do, because Kevin McDonald didn't have a contract at Swindon. He was just there until the end of the season, and it was more of a chat like, what do you want to do? He never really told me that. He never said, I want you out, basically, but he kind of said, do you really want to be here with the changes that he saw, his uncertainty? It's not going to be the same. And I just felt there was maybe a cycle had ended at that time, and even in my head, I you know, it didn't feel the same. And I think I felt they wanted because they had connections with Tottenham at that point. You know, Lee Power came in, and I felt they wanted, you know, younger players, and you know, especially coming from Premiership teams, like, you know, like the ones that we had that season with Luongo and Nathan Byrne. So that type of player. So I think they were happy for me to go, but at the same time, they didn't really force me out. But I think it was the right time to leave.
Well, you leave us with great memories, and I know you went on to play for Bradford, Shelton, and Ross County, and Livingston again, where you had you know, success up in Scotland again, and I think, is that your spiritual home as well as Swindon? Would you say? Because you've got an amazing accent for you have got that Scottish accent there. I mean, it must have had a great impact on you that whole time you spent up there.
Yeah, that's the longest I've spent at a club between the two spells, and it's been nearly 9 years at that club. So it's a small club, and it's a club that should never be in the Premiership. And we managed to get a double promotion from League One in Scotland to the Premiership, which is, you know, England is difficult, but in Scotland, League One football in Scotland is nearly part-time. So you can imagine the difference from playing in front of 200 fans up in Montrose and Elgin, and then 2 years later, you're playing against Celtic in front of 50,000 people. So what we've done with Livingston is the biggest achievement I've ever been involved in to get, you know, we got promoted to the Championship, and the manager said, we need to try and stay up in a league where there's not many, you know, amazing teams. So our aim is to stay up, finish 9th out of 10, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in the playoffs to get promoted to the Premiership. And then we get promoted, beating a Premiership, because, you know, the playoffs work that you play a team from the Premiership. All of a sudden we're in the top tier of Scottish football. So that for me is it's obviously a special place because we went through that. But in terms of, you know, the big games I've been involved in, the manager I had, and the fans I played in front of, and the stadiums I've seen when I was at Swindon, you know, nothing really compares to that. But you know, Swindon and Livingston were my two, you know, highlights, I'd say. Even though Ross County is another place where I managed to play in the SPL, so it's something that I really enjoyed, to play against Celtic, to play against, you know, to play against Hearts in front of all those fans, and Hibernian, a lot of big games. But yeah, I would say Swindon was special, really special to me. Yes.
What about managerial? I mean, I know you keep in touch with Paul Caddis and Simon Ferry and the people who played in Scotland from Swindon, but do you have pretensions of being a manager somewhere down the line in England? Is that something you might be looking at?
I'm trying to get into coaching. I've started coaching in here in Rome, and I really enjoy it. But because I'm still playing, and it's a big commitment. Because we play semi-professional, but in Italy you train every day, so it's not like Scotland is twice a week if you're a semi-pro. In Italy, it's every afternoon, so you still live like a professional footballer, but it's just not professional football. So that's still my priority. But I'm trying to, as I said, spend a lot, as much as I can with Fabrizio, which is an amazing coach, and I got to see that now because, as I said, with Di Canio, he didn't have much to do, but you know, now I realize how much he knows about football, and if I can learn anything from him, I'm delighted to. And if anything happens, obviously I'm settled in Italy now, and to come back here was something that I wanted to do after I played 19 years in the UK. And but if I settle when my son is a little bit older, maybe, you know, I would, to go back to Swindon would be like going home for me, and it's a place where, you know, I wouldn't feel far away from home. That's what I mean.
Well, you'd be welcome back at the county ground anytime. You know that, don't you? And it's right. Incredible. I hope you, as part of it, as the players who are part of that 2 years, realise how much of an impact it had on the club and the town and the fans. You said, I think you used the word surreal a little earlier on. Yeah. It was surreal for us supporters, for goodness sake. Those moments when Di Canio used to come out at the end of the game and hold the scarf up and all that kind of stuff. You know, it was just indelibly printed on our brains. So we thank you very much for your part.
Thank you for letting me be one of your players. And I honestly, I can say even more now when I'm a little bit older, it was the most special time of my life, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
There you are, Chris.
Yeah, I think we're very privileged to have had that time as well as supporters, because you don't have many of those, as you say, surreal seasons. It was really fantastic. Rafa, thank you so much. It was amazing, just bringing back all those memories and everything like that. It was and all the players. You think, oh gosh, yeah, I forgot about them and everything.
Yeah, it's true. It's the same for me. When you talk about it, you start remembering things, and so it's good for me to talk about it as well.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
Thank
you very much for everybody for joining us. We will be back next week. Look out on social media and we'll put up what we've got on next week. But until then, I'll see everybody at Crewe if you're traveling.
Crawley.
Yeah, I keep getting Crewe and Crawley.
You can go to Crewe if you want to.
No, okay, I'll go to Crewe. You all go to Crawley. Okay, so sorry. Yes, at Crawley on Saturday. Okay, take care and see you next week.